Today's film is Weapons, directed by Zach Cregger and starring Julia Gardner, Benedict Wong, and Josh Brolin, and more. Coming off the buzz of Cregger's Barbarian, expectations for this one were, well, sky high, especially for fans of smart, original horror. Many early reactions have compared it to Sinners in terms of its greatness, another inventive genre piece I reviewed earlier this year and absolutely loved. So, does Weapons live up to that level of praise? Well, let's find out. Heads up, my reviews are not spoiler free. Sometimes I go light, sometimes I dive deep, and this one leans into the details. We'll cover the highs, lows, and key takeaways, and as well as my final verdict. If you haven't seen it, stop here, watch it, and come back. So, the essential story, I'll tell you the story for this particular movie. So, at 2:17 a.m., all but one child in a third grade class vanish from their homes. It's told through six interwoven perspectives. You have the teacher, a grieving father, a houseless drug addict, the school principal, a police officer, and Alex, who is the sole child who remains. The film slowly reveals a sinister supernatural cause, and the mystery leads back to Gladys, a frail woman claiming to be Alex's aunt. Through grotesque blood rituals and object bindings, she manipulates Alex's parents into silence and self-harm, while coercing Alex into gathering his classmates' name tags. These tags allow her to bind herself to the missing children, and eventually the means to lure them into Alex's basement, each in order to feed off their essence. Her control spreads, ensnaring other characters as their perspectives intersect. In the climax, Alex turns her own ritual against her, summoning the children to kill her in a very brutal fashion that is almost played up for its comedic relief. But victory is left mostly hollow, as most of the survivors are left unable to speak or mentally shattered. And as for Alex's parents, we are told they are eventually institutionalized, while Alex now lives with other family members. With the main plot out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the good stuff, the moments that really clicked for me, the positives. First positive that comes to mind would have to be the mystery and the originality of the hook. From the moment I saw the trailer, I was in. The premise, an entire classroom gone except one child, is instantly gripping. It's fresh, creepy, and has such potential. It plays on primal fears, the safety of children and the inability to explain the unexplainable and the desperation to understand why. Even if the ending faltered for me a bit, the initial hook is one of the best I've seen in horror lately. And this, of course, brings me to the second positive I have for this film, which is the excellent sound, cinematography, and directorial tone. Cregger knows how to build unease. He uses silence as a weapon, letting scenes breathe so we anticipate the worst. The sound design is sharp and unnerving, with moments of quiet dread punctuated by sudden bursts of chaos. The cinematography keeps us unsettled. There's lingering shots of characters, dreamlike nightmare scenarios or sequences, and a fair share of grotesque scenes. From the first frame to the credits, the film looks, sounds, and feels like how you'd expect a horror film to play out. While I did like several aspects of this movie, there were also multiple areas that didn't work for me that well. And to the negatives, we shall go next. The first negative that comes to mind would have to be the split perspectives. As you know from the brief film summary, this movie is told in a non-linear fashion, jumping around from six different perspectives. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy this type of maneuvering and storytelling when all of the perspectives carry their own weight and are progressing the story forward. While some of the perspectives added more depth and intrigue to the story, namely the teacher, the grieving parent, and Alex, the sole remaining kid who didn't happen to disappear into the night, there are several perspectives that aren't nearly as impactful to the feel and tone of the movie. Quite frankly, I could have gone without three of the six perspectives that were given, in the hope that we would instead be given more screen time with the characters that were of most interest based on the materials that were being presented. The second con would have to be the unraveling of the main premise itself. For a premise this intriguing, the eventual answer, which essentially falls to a witch did it, feels like a bit of a letdown. It's not that supernatural explanations can't work, it's that Weapons doesn't invest in building the mythology behind Gladys. By the time we get there, I had more questions than the film wanted to answer, and the rules of its own horror logic felt, well, a bit thin. And speaking of Gladys, Gladys the Witch, Gladys could have been a chilling, complex antagonist. Instead, she's a mystery without much substance. We don't know why or where she came from, why she's doing what she's doing necessarily, or how she learned her rituals, and even why she's sick and tied to the strange potted tree that she's constantly bringing around. Without her perspective, or at least some hinted explanation of a backstory, she becomes a plot device rather than a substantial character, which ends up undercutting the final confrontation and, well, the emotional impact that all carries. So yeah, we've talked about what the film gets right, what doesn't work for the film. Let's now talk about some of the key takeaways that I gathered from the film. The first key takeaway is resilience of childhood. Alex's arc shows how survival can be raw and desperate, not optimistic. He adapts under extreme abuse and trauma, ultimately finding a way to fight back. In the real world, children in crisis often develop coping mechanisms that are functional but emotionally costly, and the film ends up reflecting that truth. The second key takeaway would have to be how people deal with tragedy. The film's ensemble cast showcases grief in all of its messy, contradictory forms. You have the grieving father who lashes out, the teacher who becomes withdrawn and defensive, and the principal who clings to order while chaos unfolds. These reactions aren't neatly packaged, they're erratic, selfish, and sometimes, well, even harmful. Weapons reminds us that tragedy doesn't always unite people. Sometimes it fractures the communities even further, exposing the cracks that were already there. Weapons starts with one of the strongest hooks in recent horror, but unravels into something far more conventional. The atmosphere, sound, and a few character arcs work beautifully, but the narrative spreads itself too thin. It answers its central mystery too simply and leaves its villain frustratingly underdeveloped. For me, that lands it at a 2 out of 5 stars. A film with all the ingredients for something great, but too many missed opportunities to deliver on its promise. That said, I know plenty of people who had a very different experience and really connected with this movie. So I want to hear from you. What did you think? What worked? What didn't? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next Film Sense with Brian.